Hi, and welcome back to our FIDE podcast. It's been a rough week for FIDE, actually, to that extent that I started feeling pity for them at some point. And as regular listeners will know, this is kind of rare. But to discuss these events, I have with me Mr. Dottie. Welcome.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, it's been a very quiet week in the chess world. Yeah, so where should we start? Let's try and do this in chronological order, I think.
Let's
Because
do
there's
that.
been a
But I think,
lot of stuff.
but so much has happened that actually the topic you want to bring up, it feels like completely forgotten. Yeah.
Yeah, so it feels like this happened months ago, but it was only last week that FIDE eventually announced the results of their investigation into the Magnus Carlsen Hans Niemann affair, shall we call it, and they found Magnus not guilty of most of the charges, but he was guilty of withdrawing from the tournament,
Well, the
which I think is fair.
most of the charges meant that mainly bringing the game into disrepute, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, and bringing the game into disrepute is a rather serious thing. For instance, that what Kayakin got banned for like 6 months, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting because I do feel like he did actually accuse Hans of cheating, and he didn't provide evidence of that. So I'm mildly confused about how they came to this conclusion.
Well, again, for full transparency, I have been employed by Magnus Carlsen's company for the last more than 10 years by now, almost
Oh wow!
11.
Breaking
So
news.
yeah. So I'm actually not going to say a lot about
Yeah,
these things. So I mean, well, also, but does I mean, I'm not saying Magnus did accuse him of cheating, but if he believes so, is it wrong to do it? I mean, that's the case in some kind of defamation suits, right? For instance, in the States, is my impression.
yeah. I mean, I'm not. I don't think we should go too much into
No,
the
no,
details because
fair enough.
I don't think the defamation laws would really apply here. It's more of what like FIDE's actual laws are, and
True.
it's kind of complicated. I guess. Yeah, I know you can't talk about it too much, but I guess my question would be: do you feel that Magnus is like satisfied with this outcome, or
I honestly didn't speak with him about it. I think so. I think mainly I noted that well, he wasn't banned, which means that well, World Rapid and Blitz he can play at the end of this year and someday. So more, it was like okay, there is more work for me, which is generally a good thing. But no, I didn't ask him. I would. I don't know. I understand he was fined 10,000 euros or dollars, right? But
Mhm.
I don't know. Well, it sounds weird. We don't really talk about that. We talk about golf, fantasy football, important stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know. If I knew, I would probably not be allowed to say either. But I mean, he doesn't really came with any kind of social media outburst or anything like that, right? I think basically he's just ignored it as far as I know.
yeah, I don't think he's even
Yeah,
posted about. Like, I think he did make a statement when the lawsuit ended,
yeah.
but for this one, I don't think he's even commented at all. As
No.
far
And
as I can tell.
also, while 10,000 euros, of course, for us regular people, is a considerable amount of money. For him, probably less so. I guess he just won 200,000 in Toronto a few days ago, right?
Yeah, I think he'll be able to
Yeah,
take the hit.
yeah.
But
So
where
I
does the
mean,
money go? That's our main question.
yeah. I assume they go to FIDE, right? And so
I
maybe
feel like
that's
it should go to the ethics commission. Like, I think they
really.
should get a little bit of money. They've spent almost a
Yeah.
year on this. I think they deserve a small bonus.
As I'm involved in a case at the ethics committee, I cannot praise them too much. Then it seem like I'm trying to influence the result of the thing. But I have to say, they are coming out with very, very long verdicts in the Kayakin case. In a lot of cases, I mean, if they're doing this stuff for free, which I think they are, one has to actually be impressed by that.
Yeah, I think they're. I've read more FIDE ethics cases than a healthy person has, and
Get a
yeah, in
lion.
general, I'm quite impressed with the work that they've done. Maybe I'm misreading some of it because it's quite complicated
Hmm.
language in a lot of them, but in general, I think they're doing a pretty good job, all things considered. But yeah, I guess we can't. There's not too much to really talk about now. The
No.
case is done, and he was fined, and if he pays the fine, that's the end of it. Like, do you think this is completely the end of this whole saga, or?
Again, I can honestly say I don't really know. I mean, also, it's not fully clear to me if the Hans thing is completely closed legally or not. I haven't followed that much. I mean, I'm involved in his dubious openings, experiments. I mean, the legal stuff, I think they get real professionals for. I mean, it's not like I wouldn't be happy to give my legal opinion, but they don't seem to value it overly. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, well, I'm happy to talk with on the podcast here, but I mean, it's not unreasonable that they consult serious professionals when they are sued for, I forgot if it was 10 or $100 million, but
100 million,
100 million, yeah, yeah. I mean, 10,000, he can, he can shrug off. 100 million probably would affect him a bit. So
yeah, I think that would be tough for him to get that kind of money together. But you never know.
yeah,
He
yeah.
wins a lot of tournaments. I don't know, maybe.
No, he would have to be. I mean, we have had situations where, I mean, didn't Lasker come back to become world champion, or maybe to activity because he actually needed the money? So I really don't want to start a debate about we should ruin Magnus to get him back to the world champion cycle. That's not in my interest. But yeah, no, that went wrong. Okay. Anyway, we have much more stuff to debate, right?
We do, we do. So there was a FIDE Congress assembly
Yeah.
on Sunday, and I am very suspicious about all of these big events because this is the one week where I've actually left my house for the last few months. So I was in Barcelona doing some stuff for Chessable. So I wasn't quite as terminally online as I usually am. Obviously, I would love to watch the 8 hour meeting of the FIDE assembly, but I wasn't able to. So what happened there?
Oh, a lot of stuff happened there. I mean, generally, well, it's like a normal assembly, just online. So there is, I think, almost like 160, 70 delegates there, and hardcore listeners like myself can follow it on YouTube, where we were around 100 people following it, I would say. And you're right that it starts very formally. It starts with, they play the FIDE anthem. The president tells us all, please rise. And I mean, I remember my wife came into my room, said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm standing for the FIDE anthem. What do you think I'm doing?" And I mean, so they are doing everything formally like this, and they have obituaries. They make a movie where everybody has passed away and pay honors to that. So it's a completely normal general assembly in that way. But of course, of sort of interesting topics. I mean, they go over the budget and stuff like this. I mean, even there I snoozed out. But I think the interesting things was, for instance, I was bidding for the Chess Olympiad in 2028, if I remember correctly. I mean, 2024 is Hungary. Then
Yes.
probably it's Baku in 26.
No. Uzbekistan? I'm not sure if it's
As
Tashkent or
Uzbekistan, of course. Yeah, you're
it
right.
is
You're right.
Uzbekistan. Yeah.
Pardon
I
me.
think it's Tashkent, but I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
totally sure.
probably you're right. And then in 28, there was a bidding between Abu Dhabi or Genoa. And then basically it's like, they have 20 minutes each. They show video. They speak about their city. I mean, there can be asked questions to them and such. So it functioned quite well. I mean, some of the technical aspects, I mean, I would say our podcast seems professionally produced compared to the technical quality at times. You can't hear people
Oof,
and stuff.
that's serious criticism.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, no, they went through it, and both had generally quite nice presentations. I was sure that Abu Dhabi would win a blowout uh, vote, but they only won with like 61, 62% against Genoa. Genoa also had a quite nice offer. I was a bit puzzled that Genoa seemed to have put together quite a lot of effort because I thought they have absolutely no chance to win. But I think we are going to oh, not we. I'm not playing chess anymore. But it's going to be in Abu Dhabi in 2028. Questions were like, can we get visas? And someone pointing out, isn't it absurdly hot at that point of year? But they're saying, no, we have this absurdly huge Congress center, and people has played open events here at the same time of year. No one is complaining, and so on and so forth. So there is a functional debate like this, I would say. And yeah. Well, Abu Dhabi won, and that's more or less it. I don't know what else you would like to hear for someone who spent 8 hours watching this stuff.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I would prefer for the Olympiad and in general events that are run regularly to jump around a lot more
Hmm.
than having two events. Like, I don't think it would be good for to have two events in a row in Europe either. But I think
No.
having Uzbekistan and then Abu Dhabi one after another feels like you're definitely favoring one part of the world over the rest. I mean, in general, it should be much
Are,
wider, but
are they that comparable in destination? My
I think
geography
if
is
you're
not.
traveling from Europe or the
Maybe.
US, then it's basically
Mhm.
it's almost exactly the same amount of
But
travel
this
time.
is
But
how.
probably Abu Dhabi's easier to get to, I guess, from flight connections.
But let's say in my time of being an active chess player, that includes both as a coach and as a second. South America. Okay, there was the World Championship in 2007 in Mexico, but that was an
Hmm.
8-player event. I mean, chess Olympiads in South or North America. I mean, I honestly don't recall. I mean, we're talking
Yeah,
Havana, Buenos Aires, something like this, but way, way back, right? And I think that seems to be kind of accepted. I mean, Africa, to my knowledge, haven't had any of what we could call very big events, right?
no, I think there was the only kind of serious event I think that's been in Africa is one of the Grand Chess Tour events was in
Yeah, but that's also, I
Cyprus,
mean,
but it's a small event,
that's a small
relatively.
elite event and it's not organized by FIDE. I mean,
Yeah,
so yeah,
but no, I don't recall. I
no.
mean, I guess the some kind of World Youth was just held in Egypt, or was it World
Yeah, you're,
Cadets?
yeah,
Possibly. I'm not.
hmm yeah, but they are somewhat different events to a certain extent, both in terms of, I guess, financial liability and also in terms of prestige, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely. I think the Olympiad in particular, maybe even more than other events, should be a global event, and it should
Hmm.
really
But also, I mean, let's talk
jump
realities here.
around.
The Chess Olympiad is by a mile the most expensive chess event to organize in the world, right? I mean, World Championship
Mhm.
match is considerably cheaper, is my impression.
Yeah, I think the budgets for at least Chennai and Hungary were around 10 million
That's the
euros or
figure.
dollars. I'm not sure, but yeah, in the
Yeah.
range of that.
It generally takes resources of a state. I understand that a sponsor could pay for this. Probably it's not. I mean, for some people, it's not that much money. But I mean, Norway did it at some point, but else, I mean, yeah, no, they are very, very, very different events in a way. And I mean, that South America, or Africa doesn't get it. It seems just to be that's how it is, and everybody seems to accept it. I remember, of course, even for the World Cups. I mean, I spoke to some of the Brazilian players. I said it's a long trip from Brazil to Siberia to play 2 games and go home again. But well, someone has to do it, right?
Yeah,
In
but
a
I
way.
mean, also like we've had a football World Cup in South Africa, so there's clearly
Yeah.
resources to put on big events there. I feel like if they can handle a football World Cup, they can definitely handle a chess event.
But football World Cup is different in terms of, I mean, the players are top professionals in a way. There's actually considerably fewer teams on the country, but then there is a bunch of spectators, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like the kind of benefit is obviously much bigger for a football World Cup, but also the you are talking billions of
Yeah,
dollars
yeah, yeah. Of course, it's completely
to
different. But
invest to put that together.
if we
So
talk in terms of participants, I mean, we are almost second to the real Olympiads, right? I mean, it's a serious number of people.
yeah, is and I think the coverage is generally pretty good
Hmm. Yeah.
globally, and I think yeah, it's
No, it's a pretty well functioning event, and I'm sure that both Genoa and Abu Dhabi could have put on a pretty good event in many
yeah.
ways.
Okay, so we probably shouldn't spend too much time
No, no, fair
discussing
enough.
the 2028 Olympiad. We've got lots of time to get there.
It's true. Yeah, we have time. No,
What else happened?
well, of course, by far the most let's say intriguing thing was that there was a vote for extending term limits for the FIDE president,
Or
and
removing term limits.
exactly for removing term limits, exactly, and I think the public only realized a couple of days before, right? I
Yeah, it
mean,
was definitely only announced a
I
couple of
mean,
days
I
before.
sort of realized it because I checked into the agenda. It was mainly, I was speaking quite surprisingly with the Danish delegate for completely other reasons, and he didn't answer my phone call because he said wrote to me that it was you. Okay, I'm getting a lot of phone calls from Eastern Europe who wants me to vote something, and I don't really want to talk with them. So that was his excuse for not answering me. And I was
Mhm.
curious. Okay, what are you talking about? But it seemed that sort of if you clicked on the agenda, you could see that under some proposal there was that removing of term limit for the FIDE president. And well, in 2018, one of the big election promises by Dvorkovic was that he wanted to remove term limits. And well, you can argue he fulfilled this promise because he did actually remove them. But
Yeah,
yeah, well,
he
then he
did.
did.
He did remove term limits, then he
Yeah.
just put them back. It's,
Well, you are saying he put them back. I mean, if you, the Norwegian FIDE Council member is saying, well, what could we do? I mean, if Andorra suggests to remove term limits, well, there's nothing we can do about it according to the rules.
yeah, I mean, there's also the case that who told Andorra to do this?
Yeah, I mean,
Why do Andorra feel so strongly about this, and why do the other 20 some countries
I
that
think
wrote near
21.
identical
Yeah,
letters that were copy and pasted and definitely provided to them by someone else?
I
Like
mean,
this was completely orchestrated from the top. Like I have
I,
no doubt whatsoever, and they can take me to court if they'd like. Like
I mean, I agree with Mr. Doherty. I mean, basically, you could see the documentation was maybe like 35 pages of, I think, 21 letters, who all, it's not it's not the same, but it's obvious that you suggest making the president can stay forever. Some say for 4 terms, others 3 terms, and then there is a letter explaining why. Some of them short, some of them more poetic and longer. But I mean, if it was a school class giving these 21 letters, you would say they've been copying each other, right? I mean, this
yeah,
is no
I
doubt.
mean it was 100% orchestrated,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, it's just a naked power grab. Like
exactly.
there's no reason to kind of try and soften it. This is what he's just consolidating power, and he's making it clear that he's going to be sticking around for a long time.
Hmm.
And we did have Kyrgyzstan in power for 23 years, I think,
Yeah.
which wasn't good for chess. I think there's there's no justification for anyone to be in power for that long. Like there's just after a certain amount of time, the things will get stale.
Hmm.
It's hard to make big improvements when you're already so invested in the work that you've done
Well, I
and
think also what
maintaining
this
it. Like,
shows is that, well, when you become so powerful, I think we at least agree that the letters, but also the speeches, generally becomes embarrassing, right? You're just, I mean, it feels like, a dictatorship where everybody knows this guy is going to be in power. So why am I not just going to praise him like crazy, right? I mean,
yeah, it was just totally embarrassing. Like
yeah.
all of these letters, I mean, these people should be ashamed of themselves. Like they shouldn't really be able to show their face in public
Mhm.
without being completely humiliated.
Most.
No, it's very sycophantic. These people were just,
Mhm.
they've been paid for.
Yeah, I mean, well, again, when we say pay for, it becomes strange that I'm defending it, but I'm not defending it. But it's not paid for in a illegal sense. It's more like, well, okay, that it could be, but there's no evidence of that. But also, I mean, FIDE has a lot of ways to do it in a legal sense. I mean, they
It's
have
true.
huge development funds. I mean, you can always create some kind of project, right? And
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
it's true. And I mean, in general, that is how, power corrupting absolutely is very true. And I think almost anyone who has like a small amount of power will should be able to realize this quite quickly. So, for example, if you're in a position of power where you can decide who gets a job, for example, let's say,
mhm.
I mean, you're a great example. So you
I would
have
suggest you as an example, but okay, go
no,
on.
no, but you have. Well, I mean, I'm also a good example, but you have some influence over when Magnus does World Championship matches. You have some influence over who joins the team for that match, right?
Hmm. Of course.
And the people that you're most likely to choose are people that you like. Like that's the reality, and also
You,
Laurent.
you you think I like Laurent and Jan? Or
No, no, but like
yeah.
people who are already in proximity to you. Also, partly because they already have a proven track record
Yeah,
in
yeah,
your eyes, but also, these are people you like,
of course.
and that's how power corrupts people.
Hmm.
And over time, I think that can work fine in the short term, but over time, it does start to slip.
Hmm.
And at some point, you start hiring people just because you like them, rather than because they're good at the job. Because you don't want to look outside your comfort bubble, to find
Hmm.
someone that you've never met before who might be fantastic. And like, this is why it's really important to not have someone in power for 20
Hmm.
years. And if you can't do the job in 8 years, like, there's nothing to suggest you can do it.
No, this was actually amazing by some of the speeches. They were saying, okay, I mean, 8 years or the letters, you can barely get anything done. If you want to change the organization for the better, you need longer time. I mean, okay, what do you mean 8 years, right? I mean, it
It's
become
absurd. I mean,
it becomes absurd.
look at where chess was 3 years ago.
Yeah,
In online chess,
yeah,
just
yeah,
online chess at all. Like, we didn't have, like, Title Tuesday was a. I was looking up kind of Title Tuesday stats recently because of Kramnik's blogs, and I realized that Title Tuesday, being a weekly event, hasn't even been running for that long.
Oh, really? Okay. Now
It used to actually just be a monthly event,
but they have 2 events a week now,
and
right?
now they have two per
Yeah, yeah.
week, which is a big, from 12 per year to 104 per year. That's a huge jump.
Hmm.
But also, if you go back 3 or 4 years, we have No Champions Chess Tour. We
Yeah,
have
yeah,
Title Tuesday once a month. There's a bunch of other
yeah,
events.
yeah.
Speed Chess Championship that's been the one that's
Of
been
course.
around for a while, but it's been kind of getting bigger each year.
Yeah, and also, I think, well, they are also arguing, let's say, in well, I mean, examples where you have term limits, the U.S. presidency and such, right? That, I mean, well, the first term you're trying to get reelected, but the term where you don't get reelected, you actually have a chance to get a lot of done because you stop caring about reelection and things like that. I mean, of course, you can argue anything. One argument they were giving is that FIDE should be like a company where you have a CEO who is there, as long as he wants, if he's good enough. But
But that's Emil.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I mean, this argument was just completely
Yeah,
insane. Like, there are civil servants within FIDE who are appointed. They're not elected.
mhm.
They don't have to run for election, and that's the vast majority of people
Yeah,
who
yeah.
work for
I
FIDE.
mean, no,
So
no,
there's no reason for the president to have that role. Like,
no,
it's
no. I mean, we can see on, well, the countries. Well, I mean, we are both from, reasonably democratic countries, right? I mean, we believe term limits is a good thing. While, for instance, well, with Dvorkovic as president, it's obvious to compare with Russia, who has made it. It's not like Putin is for life, but he can run again till 36 or something like that. So, I mean, again,
yeah.
no,
I mean, it's a little bit too on the nose, I think, for them to do it in exactly the same way that Putin did it.
but
Like,
I think they, of course, they won the election with 80%, which is generally, I mean, it's very discouraging. But while for them that day was a huge success, there was actually pretty strong reactions against it afterwards. Was my impression. Maybe we are just living in an internet bubble, but my feeling was that they got a lot of criticism for this. I mean,
I believe. I mean, yeah. This is the problem as well. Is that people were mad on Twitter, people were mad on Reddit, people were mad on Facebook, but none of the delegates are on. Well, probably Facebook. A bunch of them are on, but like, none of the delegates are actually online. Like, in general, these are all. I guess the average age is well over 60.
yeah, that's also a problem that there's no term limit for delegates. I mean, one of them was saying, okay, I was a delegate since Campomanes, and well, that is a while. Okay, I was also playing
Yeah, you
chess, but
shouldn't be.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's sort of it gives away that it's quite attractive to be a delegate, and also it's difficult to be removed, apparently, right? But some of the delegates are online, but also, well, I think you saw the U.S. Making a rather strong case against it, and you saw the new German president. She made also a more mild, but still a critical one. But else, no one took the word, and I think Malcolm Payne, who is known for being very harshly against, of course. This exact point of order was at the same time as Man United was playing Liverpool, and he's a strong Liverpool supporter, so it was a tricky moment for him. But he said, I have given up talking about these things because they make no sense. So we're going to lose anyway." I mean, it seems like the sort of big Western powers has just given up.
Yeah, I mean that's also my impression, and I think it's extremely difficult to reform FIDE at this point.
It's not gonna happen.
And I think in general,
Hmm. I
I think in general, like I strongly dislike the idea of an American corporation being the most powerful entity in the chess world. But I think chess.com
you're
does a
you're working for chess.com, right?
yeah. No, but I morally I don't think it's a good thing.
Uh-huh.
But I think chess.com is massively more beneficial to the chess world right now than FIDE. And it shouldn't be that way because FIDE should be a democratic organization that's run by
Yeah, yeah.
the member states on behalf
I
of
mean
all the
that
players.
chess.com tried to earn as much money for themselves. You can argue it's completely legitimate, right? I mean
Yeah,
that's
but
why they were
I
built.
don't think chess.com would be able to get away with some of the things FIDE does because chess.com is actually more
Hmm.
accountable
Yeah,
to chess players
yeah, yeah. I
because
mean,
there's a much more open dialogue between chess.com and criticism on Reddit, for example. Like
hmm.
chess.com actually pays attention to what people say on Reddit and doesn't necessarily like agree with everything or change everything, but like is take that kind of criticism is taken on board. Whereas with FIDE, like they
Hmm.
just ignore everything. Like they don't care.
Yeah, but FIDE depends on delegates, while chess.com depends on having a good product and a good customer, owner relationship in a way, right? So, I mean,
Yeah, but I mean, it's a very direct interaction
mhm.
between chess.com and chess players. And I think FIDE is definitely missing that at the moment. And I think to some extent, this is a responsibility of like chess players, but particularly the top chess players,
Yeah.
because they're very individualistic. They don't really want
But
to
also,
stand up to FIDE about
but
the
also
things that
there's
they get
no
wrong.
unity among chess players because there are so many layers. I mean, there is Magnus. Well, he's an entity on his own. There's Nakamura. He's also an entity on his own. I mean, you cannot get 20 players together and agree. You can probably not even get five, is my impression, right? I mean, what
Ye-
is. I
Yeah,
mean, it has been tried. It never really worked. But I agree with you that it would be much better to have stronger player unity. But
I,
it's
I,
very, very hard.
I do think there are certain issues that the top players do agree on.
Hmm.
Cheating, for example, I think
Yeah,
is
you're right.
something that basically there is unity amongst top players that they feel like they don't
Hmm.
agree on the degree of the problem, but they agree that it's a very serious problem and it needs to be dealt with
But also, I
much more
mean,
harshly.
those who speak up, I mean, there is not backs like me who's jumping up and down, but that is not going to work, obviously. And well, earlier it was someone like Kasparov, but well, Magnus, he's not going to do such. Neither is Hikaru and such. They are more business oriented, which is quite reasonable. I just don't see it happening, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree.
One point I
It's
want to make is that I think FIDE as an organization, I have given up on. The structure will corrupt. But I thought actually that with term limits, well, Dvorkovic will be gone. And while keeping him, he's going to win the next election now. But if he wasn't there, it would never going to be a new Russian. Then we would find someone else. So I think, well, the reality of this is not that, I mean, FIDE's level of structural corruption will be the same. But with Dvorkovic staying, it means that we will keep our ties to Russia, unfortunately, I would say. I think, to me, that's actually the main thing of this. I mean, else they would have replaced Dvorkovic with someone from their system, or they will find someone else who would be able to deliver the money. We can suggest, well, to all of many possibilities. But now it's just going to be Dvorkovic. And I think that's kind of the main problem, that from a Russian perspective, it had to be Dvorkovic. Who else, right? Um,
yeah, and I think
mhm.
Dvorkovich is going to be there for a
Mhm.
long time now. I mean,
Well, he's
I kind of
popular.
thought that he was trying to escape from it. I thought that's why he introduced term limits in the
Hmm.
first place because he was like, okay, I'll do this for 8 years, then I'm out. Like
Yeah.
because he
Actually, I mean, well, let's discuss that a bit. I told it to some Norwegian media. I said that I actually don't really think Dvorkovic wants to be FIDE president, but he's ended up there. I don't know how you see it.
that was my impression as well, but I'm not. I'm. I don't know if he's been, told that he should be
I
FIDE
mean, it's
president for
not.
life.
I
But
don't
I
believe it.
think he probably does enjoy it to some extent. I think
Hmm.
he definitely loves chess. I think
Yeah.
he's way more interested in chess than you could fake for sure.
Yeah. I mean,
But I
but
think
I think he's just as much interested in football. I mean, if he could choose to be FIFA president instead of FIDE president, he will take it. But okay, I was asking me, would you rather coach Magnus or Manchester City? I don't know. It's not a relevant point for me. Neither is it for Dvorkovic. So I mean, it's unfair criticism to some extent.
Well, I mean, he has organised a World Cup, so he has some
Exactly.
experience
It's
in
a
the
bit more
area.
realistic for him, actually. Yeah.
Yeah,
Matt, yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
I agree.
Yeah.
Is there anything else from the FIDE General Assembly that we missed?
Well, I mean, well, that as you have, it's the subject. You probably more as an expert than me. I mean, there was a Norwegian suggestion on transgender rights, rather to reverse the FIDE decision. And I know that I think, well, you're part of the Women in Chess sort of foundation, right? And you have quite some views on this point, right?
Yeah,
Or
I
am I
mean,
wrong? Yeah.
well, I don't want to speak on behalf of
No, no,
the
no.
Women in Chess Foundation. This is more my personal view, but I think that trans women are women, and there's a very simple way to deal with them, which is just let them play in women's events. And for me, the most convincing argument is that the women who play in women's events, particularly in France, where there are two quite strong trans women, the other, the cis women, we would call them, women who were born as women, they're very aggressively in support of the trans women playing against them. So I feel like if
Mhm.
their competitors are very supportive of it, that to me suggests that it's fine. And
Mhm.
I think the French women are extremely aggressively in support of the
Mhm.
trans women competing in their events.
Well, you can make the argument that there is not the French players are perhaps not competing at the absolute world elite level, and they're maybe not dependent
Yeah,
on
but no trans women are like this.
income. Yeah, yeah. That no, I agree that it doesn't have a huge effect. I mean, there's no trans women who would be competitive in the sort of world championship cycle, for instance, right? But
Yeah,
also,
and I think this issue is kind of overblown, to be honest. Like, I
hmm
think it affects a very, very small amount of people.
hmm
And I think creating this whole storm is a bit of a distraction. I
also
mean, it
we.
fits in with certain countries having very anti trans legislation.
Mhm.
So there's
Of
perhaps.
course, we should mention that the Norwegian suggestion fell completely. I just took it as a given, but I mean, I think they got less than 20% in favor, something like that.
My understanding of Norwegian rules, because I've actually had some conversations with people in the
Hmm
in Norway, is that following FIDE's regulations would be against Norwegian law.
Okay,
So
could be.
they're not.
No,
I mean, whether they're morally they agree with it or not, legally, I don't believe they can enforce these rules. And I think it's the case in other countries as well.
but just to take it out of chess, I checked what the Danish Sports Confederation have of recommendations, and well, they said in general for them it's a balance, and their recommendations to some extent is pending the physicality of the sport. That of course means in chess it's a
Yeah,
no-brainer. We are not, I mean, there, but would you be in favor of it in any kind of sport, or does it also matter if it is of a physical nature?
I think it's the advantage that people who are born as men have over women is somewhat exaggerated when you look at kind of the actual data and the
Okay.
effects that hormones have over people, and when they get hormone treatment that can have a big effect. I think in certain sports it's always going to be very, very difficult to make the case that you
I
can change
thought there was
gender.
some recent example somewhere where somebody suddenly started breaking world records and he was
I,
getting
I
pretty
think in
pissed.
combat sports it's always going to be very difficult to make the case that people who have transitioned should be able to fight against other women. And there are cases of where it's been completely okay, but I think optically it's always very difficult to make that argument. But I think in most sports, and also in general, most sports are played at kind of amateur levels anyway.
Yeah.
Like, as long as no one's at risk and no one gets hurt, and obviously that massively depends on the physicality of the sport. I think we shouldn't have the same rules for rugby as we have for tennis. Like, you know, and I mean, tennis is obviously a physical sport.
Yeah.
Men generally serve a lot faster than women, but it should just be a sport by sport basis. And I think the number of people that this really affects is so small that it's just so overblown. And
I thought
I
there
think in
was
chess, it's just not an issue. It
in
really
chess
isn't.
it's not. I mean, I recall some years ago I followed some Danish debate, and there was maybe some running disciplines where it was clear that okay, this actually is a problem we have to deal with here because the previously world number one could not qualify for World Championship finals anymore, and well, then of course it becomes a problem. But I agree that in chess there is not remotely one relevant case where it could be problematic, as far as I know. Right?
Yeah, we're going to get a bunch of insane comments in the
Yeah,
future.
yeah, but that's, I mean, yeah, well, that we're gonna do anyway. But well, to go more on to something that's actually for real insane, that's gonna be the FIDE circuit, right? I mean,
Oof,
it
the
should be the
FIDE
FIDE
circus.
circus, exactly. I mean, this is you go ahead because this is yeah, entertaining. Yeah,
So we still don't know who's going to qualify for the candidates.
no,
We are recording on the 20th of December, and it closes in 11 days. So we still don't know who will win the FIDE circuit. Currently, Anish Giri is leading.
well, it's actually Fabiano Caruana who's leading,
yes.
but he's qualified
Well, I
by
mean,
other
that's the
means.
other part is that everyone who actually qualifies just passes on their spot because they've qualified through other means, and it's
Yeah, yeah, he's I think Anis is number 2 or 3, right?
yeah.
But
I mean, Fabi's had the best year, and I feel like actually because Fabi finished third in the World Cup, right?
mhm.
And I feel like winning the FIDE circuit is actually a much bigger achievement than finishing third in the World Cup. And it's odd that he gets the third place World Cup spot, but not the FIDE circuit spot.
But
Because
I think it's, isn't it because it happens in chronological order, so you have a, rather than that.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
I mean that's the reason. But it just feels odd that
yeah,
because he is significantly ahead in the FIDE circuit. I think
oh
there's
yeah. I mean, well
people would
now,
need an extra two events to catch him. I think.
I mean, Magnus, for instance, now won into Ram2 ahead of Caruana, so of course, I mean, you get, well, who has the best year becomes more of a debate. But if you take FIDE circuit events, I mean, Caruana has just been dominating this year, right? He had, I mean,
Yeah,
he's back. I mean, earlier it used to be on the rating list Magnus, and then a massive difference to the next. Now there, I mean, Caruana maybe is not that close to Magnus, but he has his own tire, right? I mean, it's Magnus, it's Caruana, and then it's a bunch, as far as I remember.
yeah, I think that would be fair.
Or maybe
Or
Hikaru is there. I'm not sure, but it's true that
for this year anyway. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
Caruana's had an excellent year.
But
So there's
as we speak, Arnis is qualified, but we are now at round 6 in a tournament in Chennai, and that could change things, right?
yes. So according to the statistics from Chess Numbers, Gukesh is actually the favorite to
Yeah,
find out because he's in the lead in Chennai, and I think he has a 72% chance to qualify.
yeah. I mean, that is again based on ELO ratings and randomness. Here, of course, when we solve this in order, I mean, this is, well, for Gukesh, it's do or die. So I mean, he's not trying to win the tournament with extra points. He just wants to be number 1, as far as I understand, right?
Yeah,
Again,
and
there
if
is some,
he needs a tie for first as well.
yeah, but he needs a tie with maximum 3 or 4 players, and he doesn't need to win the tie breaks, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So, but it doesn't. Well, I think one aspect of this is that this is the Chennai Masters. This was not a planned event, right? It's something that suddenly appeared, and there has been a debate: is that reasonable or not?
I think it's completely reasonable.
Good, we agree. I mean, there was, I think, some Indian chess side was sort of arguing, am I implying anything? I said, not at all. I mean, this is what's intended. They're organizing a great Grandmaster event in India. It's completely normal.
I mean, there was a line in when they announced it from ChessBase India that they'd hoped to do this in January, and this was like their goal for the year. Which okay, let's be real, it's not the case. Like this came around at the last minute, and the goal was to provide a chance for Gukesh, but not just Gukesh. Arjun Ergasi also had a shot at the rating spot, and so did
Oh,
Parham.
he had a spot at the Grand Circuit spot. He actually needed, if he
Oh,
won
Arjun, okay.
sole leader, he would be
Sorry.
exactly. Max Sodlo could win the rating spot by an insane performance, right?
They did. So they did invite other people with a dog in the fight, which I think is really to their credit.
Yeah.
And they also invited Wesley.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. But so, no, it's, I mean, I think this one is, we're going to get to rating spot, it gets more complicated. This one is easy, right? There's just you cannot come up with any legitimate arguments against it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think also the London Chess Classic was
Yeah, that's true.
that obviously was going to happen for quite a while, but my suspicion is that Gukesh agreed to play in that tournament because he knew it gave him a chance.
I mean, the way it's done with the circuit, I'm not a fan of, and it helps organizers, obviously. I mean, you can probably tell Gukesh you have to pay to play in London. I'm sure they didn't do that, but your negotiation situation become pretty good as an organizer if you know that this guy badly needs you, right? I mean, that must.
And I think it's a valid thing to do. I think it's within the rules.
Yeah.
And it's like I have no problem with this event whatsoever. I think it's excellent that they've put this together. I think it's a lot of credit to the Indian organizers as well to put this together late. And I think it's, the field that they've put together is really nice because they could have definitely put together a weaker field that would have increased his
But let's
chances.
say this tournament finishes and Gukesh actually doesn't win. If the organizers tells everybody, I mean, we do actually have 9 years till New Year. Would you mind doing another one? You think that would be too much?
No, I think they should do it. I think they should lock the doors.
Yeah, lock the doors. That's it. Okay, good.
We go again.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like in poker, you have this rebuy option, right? So might be in the contract. Who knows, right?
No, I think it's. I think it'd be valid, honestly. Like, I think it's within the rules, and I think
doing the same event instead of having one double round event, if you do two separate single round events, I think you're pushing it a bit, in my opinion. But anyway,
I honestly think that I would not harshly criticize, but I would mildly criticize the players that are not doing this.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think Vincent hasn't really. Maybe Vincent has like a bunch of games planned. I don't know, but he has a shot at the rating spot.
But let's move to the rating spot. Yeah, right.
Okay.
I mean, that is much more. Well, that's more.
Yeah, that's true. That's much murkier.
Yeah. So Max Sodlo, we agreed he's out. He's playing in India. Is not doing well. No chance, right? The current rating holder is Wesley So, and he's moved to Twitter. He's actually blocked you, which is quite impressive. He's the nicest guy in the world.
I have some news on that front. He did unblock me after.
Okay.
He did block me for a bit and then unblocked me, which I was kind of. Honestly, Wesley's Twitter escapades have really confused me.
Yeah.
I don't really know what's happening. I think he's veering back and forth between slightly unhinged posts and just excellent trolling. Like, genuinely top tier, extremely funny. I hope he stays on Twitter.
It's extremely puzzling for me that Wesley is on Twitter, but that's a different story. I mean,
But yeah, he did block me and then he unblocked me.
So really?
I don't know where we're at now. I hope we can still be friends.
Yeah,
we have differing views when it comes to politics.
Comes with a risk being friend with you, but fair enough. A warning given, but yeah, I understand. But Wesley had just decided we think to stay at home, but actually, I mean, we think we know everybody who's playing, but there's nothing illegal in just having a tournament and reporting it quietly, right?
Yeah, and there's nothing illegal with just turning up at some random tournament and just playing some games.
I mean, for instance, I know that Hastings has weekend tournaments. I mean, so you can actually finish an event before the 1st of Jan and such, right? But
yeah, I guess the problem is you can only get the 0.8 rating points once per tournament.
You can only get it that's not a lot then.
So you really need to play reasonably high rated players.
But of course, the most controversial...
It's only above 2350,
Yeah, the most controversial thing is happening in France, right? Not unsurprisingly.
Well, let's go back one step because Lenier Dominguez did play in Sitges. He didn't do super well.
I mean, he was following your advice. You were basically tweeting that at some point, right?
Yeah, no, I think his decision to go to Sitges was correct.
Yeah.
He was on 4 out of 5, and then he withdrew from the tour.
This withdrawal, I don't understand any bit of, to be honest.
So when it was announced, I was like, okay, so he withdrew on the night of the rest day, and I kind of forgot that it was a rest day, so I thought, okay, he didn't win his game today, that's why he's withdrawn. But it turned out that wasn't the case. He just withdrawn on 4 out of 5. He didn't play round 6, which was White against the 2500. I mean, I feel like the optimal solution would be to play that game, and if you don't win, you don't win. Then you withdraw, because he was still in with a chance of making
I
the race.
thought so. I mean, it was puzzling to me, and well, I saw some said that he doesn't want to risk his invitations for later, but that strikes me as a bit weak, but also, I mean, you're only risking rather few rating points in principle. Whenever you play a game, there is a principal swing of 10 elo points. So I mean, but
Yeah,
no,
I mean,
it puzzled me,
with
to be honest.
the 2500. I mean, let's face it. Like Dominguez with White against the 2500 is a pretty big favorite.
I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, there he's
Even an Indian 2500.
yeah, yeah.
Different
No, of course.
category.
He probably chose a bad event to win rating because there might be a lot of underrated Indians in this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, he did draw with a 2300.
Yeah. Mhm.
That was he was actually worse significantly in that
Yeah.
game, and he won a game against an 1800, but that was not easy.
No.
And this 1800 was certainly, again, not an 1800. He'd already beaten two
I think
2300 plus players.
Dominguez tried to do it incredibly straight. He found a tournament that was publicly announced beforehand, and he chose to play it. But it was a rather I mean, I thought he would have had a good chance, but of course, it was not as favorable as the choice of others, I would say, right? So
That's true. That's true. So we go to now the guy who's doing it right.
Yeah.
So Ali Reza Firouzja is now playing in Chartres.
His
And
home city in France, new home city in France, yeah.
Yep, and he's playing a series of 2-game matches against lower rated players who are perhaps not the youngest.
No, I honestly don't know. I mean,
I think
yesterday he finished a match which he won 2-0 against Dvorkovic, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Belgian player,
Yes.
something like this.
Yeah, he hasn't played any French players, by the way.
And he won't, or
I don't think so. I think they're Ukrainian, both. Or
okay, could be. I honestly don't know. Right now he's on 27.53, which means he is still 4.4 behind Wesley. So there's still some way to go, right?
yes,
But how much does he need to get there?
he needs, I believe, 5.5 out of 6
of the remaining games or of total?
No, sorry, out of the remaining games. So he now needs 3.5 out of 4.
Okay, but okay, yeah. I mean, that draws some criticism and also some. Well, from you it got praise apparently, right? But I mean,
yeah, I think he's doing it correct. Like genuinely, I'm not ironic at all.
You
like,
actually mean it, yeah?
I genuinely think this is what any athlete in this position should do. I mean, you don't necessarily, because you can argue that picking softer 2650s who give you more of a not necessarily softer, but like you could pick a 2650 with the right style to maximize your chances, like, or you could even play, like, let's say you pick Richie, like you play 2 games against Richie Report. It could be you win 2 games or you lose 2 games, but the chances of you having 2 decisive games are reasonably high. So if you pick someone with the right style, depending on the rating, I think there's also that way to do it. But I think him going for it is a very good sign for him and a good sign for chess.
You're basically claiming he went to some mathematician and asked, okay, what is the optimal way for me to play chess for 1 week, having the chance to win 7 elo points? And he sort of ran a billion simulations and said, do matches against these guys. I mean, you're saying something like that.
I mean, it's possible he did that, but also these 3 guys also play for the local club. So
yeah, that helps
my impression,
helps
I think. So that's probably...
Yeah. I mean, things like this has happened in the past on a smaller scale. I mean, I wanted to have 2,700 on an elo list, so I played Mads Andersen, who is now the highest rated Dane, but he was like 14 and maybe 2,300. So he was not an underrated junior. He was a very strong junior, but I needed to beat him 2-0, and I managed to do that. And I mean, people have done it for more serious stakes, like the Grandmaster title. You need to get to a certain rating, so you challenged some guy locally, and so on and so forth. But you are saying you find this 100% legit. It's a bit.
So there's 2 reasons I find it 100% legit. Firstly, I think if you were going to rig these games, you don't play 3 different people, because you're you're massively increasing the chances that it gets
Yeah,
out there.
yeah,
So why would you play 3 people when you can play one person? You only need to pay one person to be quiet. So why pay 3 people to be quiet? Because that's what the cost would be if you're rigging the games. Is
hmm
not to pay someone to play chess with, is to pay someone to be quiet for the rest of their career. Or the rest of your career, anyway.
yeah, yeah.
And I assume Alireza has, a significantly long career ahead of him. So you can't, like, it doesn't make any sense to have 3 different opponents here. And the second case is like, so if you were an active player and someone of Ali Reza's level asked to play a 2-game match against you, would you say no?
No.
I mean,
Uh,
obviously you're getting paid for it as well.
well,
You get paid to play 2 games against a very strong chess player. Like,
I probably would. I mean, if Magnus says, "Okay, let's have a Denmark-Norway match," am I gonna play? I don't know. Sounds like it'll be a lot of beating up, but yeah, I don't know. But of course, no. The question is, if I mean, well, if we agree that there's no way these guys are losing on purpose, but still they would be spoiling the party if the Ali Reza didn't qualify. I mean, well, as someone says, what is the purpose of this
but
tournament?
that's
And
a
you,
huge win for you. Like,
yeah,
for
yeah,
them, for their reputations, this is like they have a big incentive to win a game
hmm yeah,
because it proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that they're playing legitimately. They also win a game against one of the strongest players in the
yeah, yeah.
world. They
hmm
get paid to do so. Like, there's no real way. I mean, if they lose 2 games to Alireza, okay, people can say, well, this worked out well, but also
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what you should be doing. You probably should lose 2 games to him. He's a
I
stronger
saw
chess
that
player.
Wesley So was tweeting during the game and criticizing this guy's exchange sacrifice. But I mean, I don't think it was rigged. I think it's well, lack of he was under pressure. It was lack of chess understanding or desperation. I have made worse things myself. I promise. I mean, it was not an
Yeah,
understandable error.
I
But
did see a lot of I did see a lot of comments about it that acted like he just didn't realize his rook was under attack, and like I don't think that's what happened there.
no, no. I mean, well, I'll say it's a 24 something guy against a world elite player. It's gonna look ugly at times. I mean, so yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean this is how these games generally go.
But
But
not
yeah, I
every.
think the reason, like the justification for him to rig these games is not there. Like, because it's also only a spot in the candidates, which he's already played in. Like,
Yeah, that's another thing.
this is
I
not
mean,
$1 million. Like,
no, how much? I mean, well, you can see people really care about these candidate spots, right? I mean, so
for
it is
sure, and they
important.
should.
Yeah,
They absolutely should. But it's not worth losing your entire career over.
no, I mean, a world championship match. I don't think it's life changing money for them, but it's an incredible sporting challenge. It's a lot of money and so on and so forth. But candidate spots, I mean, Ali Reza will get some sooner or later in his life, and he already had some. Not a particularly good experience for him, by the way, and such. So, but well, while you seem to agree, our main subject, FIDE, had a slightly different opinion. They have actually, I don't know what they have done exactly, except from tweeting.
Well, apparently they announced that they were investigating this tournament, which I don't know why they would announce this. I don't know what information they need to gather. Like, I don't know if they're just announcing that, yeah, we're watching the games. It's like, okay, we're all watching the games. I don't know why they needed to tell us that. But
I
yeah, they
think
have announced that they're going to be keeping a very close eye on this tournament, and they might not rate it
they
if they
have
decide
they
it's not.
seem to have the right not to rate it, right? But let's say they think, okay, no, this looks suspicious. We're not rating it. I mean, that must create all kind of legal problems immediately, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, LA Racer will go immediately to Cass, and
Well, you can't actually go immediately to CAS. You have to go to ethics
no, I
committee.
think he will. I think he'll immediately go there.
Yeah,
He'll
yeah.
march to the office and just
Maybe that you can actually do it. You're right. You're just, but I don't think he will succeed by that. But yeah. So no, this is kind of puzzling. I'm pretty sure that FIDE is hoping he doesn't get there like this. But
yeah. I just think there's a bunch of ways to. I mean, it is kind of gaming the system, but it's gaming the system in a legitimate way, and I think there's probably still more to come. Like,
well, I would.
I don't see a problem with, for example, your favorite chess player, Anish Giri, if he arranges a 2-game match with,
Yeah,
I'm
but
not sure who he would need. He needs someone.
no, Giri is
He needs 8 points. So say Vidit. If he plays 2 games against Vidit and you flip the coin,
yeah, I understand.
I
Well,
don't have a problem with that.
no, no. I
You
mean,
can't rig games. That's obviously clear. But like, you can play 2 games of chess, and if it goes one way, it goes one way.
I don't want to speak badly about Giri, but I mean, well, beating Vidit 2-0 is not that. I mean, it's not that great a chance in a way. I mean, of course,
No,
that could
no,
be a
but of course you need someone reasonably strong unless you go
yeah. Yeah.
3-0. Like,
Hmm.
it's
Well, I mean, he could play. Well, there's no Bundesliga, but there is probably something in a way. I mean, winning 8 points is not that simple in a way.
yeah. I mean, that's why I suggested a 2-game match on the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
31st.
I understand that. I mean, there is a strong incentive to do something
I mean,
like
if
this.
you don't have, let's say Gukesh wins,
Hmm.
and for whatever reason Ali Reza doesn't overtake Wesley.
Yeah.
Let's say he loses a game. So on the 31st of December, Anish is out of the FIDE circuit spot, and 2 wins gets him the rating spot. Like, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't play 2 games against some random 27.
Yeah, yeah.
You just see what happens. Like,
Well,
there's nothing wrong with that at
the
all, and
the most
it's
obvious thing would be to play against Dominguez. I mean, well, one of them wins 2-0, great. And I mean, for Dominguez, maybe 1.5 would be enough. It's strange not to organize these kind of things, right? I mean,
yeah, and I mean, I think Alderus would probably do the same thing.
yeah, yeah. So no, we can see a lot of action. I was at some point I started wondering when is the cutoff? Is it 23rd of December, Honolulu time, which is the latest, or how does it work? I
I
mean,
have no idea. Yeah, I
no,
mean, these regulations for the FIDE circuit and for the rating spot have been very
yeah.
poorly written, I think would be fair.
But sometimes you make rules that are also based on people acting respectively and sanely. But you're saying people are just acting rationally, right? That's your argument.
Yeah, I think the Alireza tournament and the Chennai tournament are both the rational
Hmm.
outcomes of what the rules are.
If you would change it, well, I actually read more or less all your tweets. You think the main problem is that FIDE should organize their own events, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is where all this chaos comes from, is that FIDE doesn't have a set cycle with
Hmm.
their own events, which they should have. Like, I mean, even if you compare it with the Champions Chess Tour,
Hmm.
there's no way for any of this to happen in the Champions Chess Tour because each event has a clear winner who gets points that qualifies for the next events and so on and so forth. There was never a way to game the system. And I think if you look at I don't think the Champions Chess Tour is a perfect system
Hmm.
to provide the candidates because the thing I don't like is that people who are already qualified can continue to play. I think
Hmm.
it's fine for the Champions Chess Tour because it provides
Yeah,
entertainment,
it's a
but to
commercial
provide
event.
the
They can do
best
what they want.
player is that aspect should be removed. But if you look at the people who were in Toronto, other than Lazovic, who was a clear outlier,
Hmm.
like the Toronto was a very reasonable candidates tournament that you would expect if all the best players in the world were playing in a cycle.
It's close. You're right. Nepham was, yeah, yeah. Well,
Nepo didn't make it, but okay, and Ding didn't
of
really
course, Ding is the world champion. So yeah, yeah, sure, sure. I get your point. Yeah. Hmm.
Ding didn't really
No,
play,
no.
so he didn't qualify. But Nepo is well. I mean, if
Hmm.
you swap Nepo for Lazovic, then it's 100% a
I mean,
candidates
let
tournament.
us say the qualification for the European Football Championship here, right? I mean, there is a clear group stage where people qualify, and then there is this extra thing called Nation Leagues, which might feel a bit weird and unjust, but there is a pretty clear system. It's not like at the end of December everybody will try to beat San Marino as hard as possible or something like this,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean that would be
yeah.
interesting. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think, and also the main flaw, which kind of they got away with, is that there was a scenario at the Sinkfield Cup where
Yeah.
players could potentially lose to benefit themselves, and
Hmm.
that should never happen in any system. Like, that's just deeply flawed.
This has happened in other sports as well at times. It's a little bit hard to avoid, but I generally agree that, of course, I mean, well, you should have qualification events where you have to do it in a positive manner. And of course, I mean, well, we have had this situation a bit before in chess. I think the bad scenario never happened in terms of people actually did lose. But of course, I think it was very easy there to see that in the last round it could be, should Giri lose to Nepomniachtchi, then he would be qualified. I think even in the last round, had Wesley So won his game,
Mhm.
he made such a quick draw that it didn't matter. But had Wesley So won his game, it would be beneficial for Giri to lose, because then it will be a three-way tie for first, and he will not have enough
Yeah,
points.
yeah.
And
And
yeah, these kind of things are stupid. Obviously, there's no doubt
that's a
about
big problem. But for me, my personal preference would be FIDE organizes 8 tournaments per cycle,
it.
and the winner of each one goes straight to the candidates. There's no way you can mess around with it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it gets a bit too random, but maybe that's how sports is. We always understand the main problem is money, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could still use existing tournaments. I still don't like that pre-qualified people can play it, but for example, you have the World Cup, you have the FIDE Swiss,
Hmm.
you have World Rapid and Blitz. Like, why don't they give candidate spots? Is that worse than any other method? I don't think so.
No, it's a balance. I would also like to have the best players there, and I don't know, to be honest. And it's also events that can be rigged to some extent in the last couple of rounds and such. I don't know, to be honest, if that's a good, how it should be done in a way. But of course, not having your own ways, you lose control. Of course, you could argue, yeah, you're saying, okay, we choose World Rapid as a qualifier. I mean, no, you could do several things.
I get, but I guess that the main principle is that FIDE should have control over every route into the candidates, and at the moment they control,
Yeah.
you know, the FIDE, the Grand Swiss, and the World Cup, and the rest are kind of random.
I have generally been in favor of the rating spot, and I haven't been deleting old tweets, so people can still document it. I think also part of the problem is that, I mean, well, if Magnus would qualify by rating, we would all be fine. He's number one. If Caruana qualified by rating, that would be fine. He's
Mhm.
clearly number two. You cannot really challenge that unless you do 31 games in December against some guy and beat him all the times. The problem is suddenly when you compete for lower spots on the rating list because the best players have, qualified by other means. It starts ending up weirdly, right? I think that's what's gone wrong in both circuit and in rating spot.
Yeah, I mean the the easier way would be you have the rating spot decided in January 2024 for the next candidates.
That also doesn't really work, right? In a way. No, I don't know. I mean, at some point it was said that the Grand Chess Tour should be a qualifying circle with probably two free rate candidate spots. I don't know. I mean, but I think also Ogor mentioned that the rating spot should be decided after the Grand Swiss, because then there is a big event we can all play, and you cannot start doing this trickery stuff afterwards, right? The problem, of course, is that, well, we saw it with St. Louis. No one gave a damn who's winning the event. Suddenly it became, who gets this amount of points, that amount of points. So it's a pity when it's almost like you take over other events because they start caring about the rating or the Grand Prix points rather than the actual event itself, right? So it's
Yeah, I think these events should just be separate. Like World Championship qualifiers should be big enough to be their own events, and the goal should be to qualify for the candidates to play for the match. And
I
like
agree.
people have also said, well, maybe we should call them some kind of interzonal tournament,
Well,
which I don't
then
think
you
these are a worse system than what we
no,
currently have.
then you go back. I mean, what you're afraid of is that the best players would not suddenly qualify. I mean, a world championship in football without Brazil would be kind of bad. They still have to qualify, but we all understand that with the 14 matches, they will qualify. I mean, I think they have actually always qualified, right?
Yeah, but
So,
also we're already there.
yeah,
The best player in the world doesn't play in it, so
yeah. I think
like,
mainly the problem is that some of the best players doesn't want to play actually, right? So, yeah.
yeah. But there's that. But I think if you were to arrange, say, 8 mini Swiss tournaments between all of the 2,700 plus players, like I
Hmm.
don't think you're getting any real outliers winning those
Maybe
events.
not. No, and you can also say, I mean, if Magnus had 8 Swiss events he could win to qualify, and he won none of them. Okay, tough luck. I mean, that's yeah. Then he shouldn't qualify for the candidates. I mean,
Yeah, and also, if my preference, and I understand not everyone agrees with this, is that once you're qualified, you shouldn't be allowed to play in
No,
any qualifying events. Then they do get slightly easier as, Magnus wins one, Hikaru wins one,
yeah,
Fabio
yeah.
wins one. They don't get to play
I
anymore.
generally agree with it. I understand. I mean, for me, it was great Magnus could play the World Cup because he lacked that in his trophy collection and so on and so forth. But I understand that for people facing Magnus in the quarterfinals, I think, okay, why do I have to? My biggest challenge comes in the quarterfinal of, you know, the second layer qualification event is ridiculous, right? And
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I don't think the World Cup should be part of any qualification cycle.
no,
I think it should just be the knockout world champion. Like, I
yeah,
think it's such a good event that it's just
yeah,
there's
yeah,
no reason for it not to be the knockout world champion. I think FIDE are still kind of scared of the mistakes that were made in the early 2000s where they tried to
yeah.
make it the actual world championship. But like, I think knockout world champion is a reasonable title. I don't think it's necessarily worse than Blitz world champion or Rapid world champion, which we decide
No,
in these big Swiss events. And I think the World Cup is just such a good event that it should be able to
yeah.
stand on its own.
I
Like, there's
mean,
no reason for qualification from
it is an
this.
amazing event, and well, for me as a sort of sub elite player, once breaking top 30, maybe generally. No, I didn't actually break top 40. I broke, but being top 50, top 100. I mean, it was a huge thing for my career. It was something you really wanted to qualify for. It's something you really wanted to prepare for, and it should be there. And I mean, for me, it didn't matter if it was called World Cup or World Champion. But I get your point that I think it's insanely great for the event that the best player in the world is playing. But of course, if it becomes an important qualifier for other people, it's also a problem. So generally, I mean, yeah, you should have things that rests on its own, right? I mean, it's like, as I said, World Cup in football. Well, you have qualification events for that, which is purely qualification events for that, and that's great. And the problem is finances. But I mean, FIDE was doing their budget. They have 7 million euro in the bank. They can organize events if they chose to. Is my impression.
Yeah, give me two. I'll do it.
I will pass it on, but they don't seem to read my Twitter that intensively. So yeah,
Yeah, no, I don't think it would be incredibly expensive, but I think it's clear the FIDE circuit was a money saving exercise,
I
and
think, and
it's
also to be fair, they have done it, spinned it beautifully. I mean, they basically made it like seem that the feeder circuit was an addition to possibilities for people, while in reality, it's just, well, everybody who wants to organize our World Championship qualifier can do it for free. We are fine by that, but this is a good spin. I mean, you can.
yeah. It's not. I'm not a huge fan. I mean,
No, no, no.
I
I'm
do
joking.
I do like the kind of fairness that everyone does have a chance at this, but I
But
don't. I think it's just
it's
it's
not
just
fully still. I understand, but I mean, let's say other sports like tennis or golf. I mean, if you're top 100, you have a right to either play the event or play the qualifier. It's not how it works in chess, right? I mean, Dominguez has to go to, well, he chooses to go to Sitges. He could actually have played in Chennai instead, right? But I mean, well, for instance, the Sinkfield Cup, a bunch of points in play, you have to be invited there and so on, right? So it's not fully fair either, in a way.
yeah. I think that's in general. I wouldn't be in favor of adding existing events into the cycle, like
I think.
the Grandchester or the Champions Chester, because I think these
Mhm.
events should be separate. They should be private. They should be for
And
entertainment.
I think actually it's completely fair that private events they can invite whoever they want. But then we should also have feeder events where there is incredibly clear rules of who gets in, right? I mean, and
Yeah, I mean,
it's,
I think at the moment my preference would just be 8 tournaments with open to all 2,700 plus players. You can get in if you get to 2,700. Like, I think that's a reasonable
yeah, yeah.
cutoff because you can get to 2,700 by playing in opens. I mean, I think Rapport got to like 2,750
Maybe
before.
the problem for players is that they're used to getting a considerable sum for playing and stuff like this. If this is moderate price fund, no
I
cost
think you could
pay.
fund them reasonably well. Like, these would be decently viewed tournaments. You should be able to
Mhm.
find sponsors for.
You're basically saying it's like Olympiad. You have to bid for these kind of things. The cost is a certain amount of money or something like this.
No, no, I think FIDE should find sponsors for
Yeah. Yeah.
these events.
Okay.
Like, I think it would be I think similar to the Champions Chester, where you have the Air Things Masters
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
Chessable Masters and things like this. I think you should be able to find a sponsor for a tournament. But every player is above 2,700. You have people from
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
over the world. You have maybe Hikaru. I mean, like, realistically, if you have a tournament with Hikaru and you can't find a sponsor for it, you can't do your job. Like, like
Bold
it's
statement
just
here, but
instantly, a
yeah.
very large amount of eyeballs on this event. Okay, you hope he doesn't qualify in the first one so he keeps playing, but
Mm-hmm.
like this would be pretty marketable, I think, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you would need a massive amount of money. Like,
No,
if you were to say 100,000 prize fund for each tournament, it's 800,000 total. It's cheaper than a World Cup.
but 100,000. I mean, if you are expecting 50, 2,700 players, I'm not sure there is that many, but
There's only 36 now.
fair enough. Okay. I mean, there's still expenses and so on and so
Yeah, top
forth.
10 win prizes.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, quite some would show up. Yeah, I get your point. And if
I
they,
mean, the expenses are going to be more because you need a decent venue and you need.
yeah, I understand, but who knows? Anyway, we are just theorizing here. It's very easy to spend air money, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, we agree that I mean that's how it would be in tennis, right? I mean, you have classical events, but there's a lot of events happening and so on and so forth, and there is everybody actually has the right to play. I mean, it's even been one of my ideas that well, let's say Weigand in principle, you could have two spots, but at least qualifier 2 days before, open to everybody, 2,600 open or something like that, right? It would be
No, we are not messing around with the field in Waikanze. Like this.
okay. Any kind of other event, but I mean that well,
Yeah.
some is there by invitation and merit. Others have a chance to qualify, but still a limited amount of group. I mean, I think in Wimbledon you can show up not as an amateur, but as a decent ranked player. You have a chance to qualify and so on, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's possible to make systems, obviously, but let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, we have spoken a bunch, right? So I don't know
We
if you
have.
have 1 hour, 10 minutes. I think it's just two of us left here, by the way. But yeah.
Yeah. So I guess this is going to be our last episode for the year as well.
Oh, really? Okay, fair enough.
Well, I mean, it's going to be mine. I don't know what you're doing next week.
No, that's true. Well, as you mentioned, Magnus didn't get banned, so he's actually playing World Rapid and Blitz. So I will hopefully have to have some interesting work to do there. So that's it.
Yeah.
But
Okay, maybe before we go, so do you prepare for every opponent individually for that kind of thing, or do you just send them a bunch of stuff in the morning and go figure it out?
I definitely don't send him stuff in the morning like this. But I mean, well, pairings happens very very shortly before and such. So again, it depends on the internet possibilities and so on and so forth. I mean, it has been varying a bit, but I think we are normally a little bit in touch. But it's also, I mean, sometimes pairing a pop list on chess results, and then he has to play in 5 minutes. So it could be okay, this guy plays that or whatever. But I mean, there is some kind of communication, but it's mainly me sitting there being available, and if he's won a good game or lost a bad one, maybe he just doesn't give a damn and contacts me, but I'm available, and it's a bit random there at times. So, but I mean, no, you're right in that I will try and help during, but it's not like I sent him 50 files in the morning and please look at that. No, it's not. I don't think he's that interested in that. I mean, I might ask him a little bit, which kind of directions are we going and such. But I mean, beforehand. But well, generally, I think he pays me to be ready, but also not to bother him too much. And well, that's yeah. You can question why he doesn't want to be bothered by me, but that seems to be the realities at least. So, but I mean, it's not like I'm not gonna be the 20. I mean, well, we have a birthday. I even have a 10-year anniversary and so on. But I'm not gonna be drunk during that period because I actually have to do some kind of work. But well, it's not. Yeah. Anyway, we will see. But we should say Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to each other, to our listeners, to everybody, the world of chess.
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone, and we'll hopefully be back in the new year. Although I'm kind of worried that we're going to have to do an emergency episode over the next week because,
I mean,
stuff
mean, the last 3 days has been insane, actually. So we'll see. But who knows?
Okay.
Our intention is that this is the final year for this year, at least.
Yeah.
So,
fingers crossed. Okay.
Bye. Yeah.
Bye, guys. See you next year.